Hello, my name is Nathaniel, and welcome back to the SleepStory Collective. I am so glad you are here tonight. At the SleepStory Collective, our purpose is singular: to help you unwind, settle into comfort, and slip calmly into sleep. And tonight, there is no need to rush towards that sleep. There is no need to chase it. No need to force your thoughts to become quiet all at once. You can simply let yourself be here, listening, breathing, and slowly loosening your hold on the day. Whether you are listening from somewhere cold or warm tonight, from somewhere busy or already quiet, you are welcome here. You are welcome exactly as you are. Not only if you feel calm, not only if the day went well, not only if your mind is already soft and willing. You are welcome with the thoughts still moving. You are welcome with the tiredness still sitting in the body. You are welcome with the little unfinished things that try to follow people into bed. They can follow you only as far as this moment, and then they can begin to fade. Let your attention come gently to the body, not with effort, not to correct anything, only to notice. Notice the place where your body meets the bed, the chair, the blanket, or whatever is holding you tonight. Notice the support beneath you. Notice that you do not have to hold yourself up in quite the same way now. The surface beneath you can do some of the holding. The room can do some of the holding. The night can do some of the holding. Let the muscles around the eyes soften. Let the forehead become smooth in its own time. Let the jaw loosen, even just a little. There is no need to clench around the thought. There is no need to prepare an answer. There is no conversation you need to rehearse right now. Only the sound of this voice, only this slow beginning, only the simple permission to stop carrying the day so tightly. Let the shoulders ease down, not pushed, not forced, just allowed. Let the arms become heavy. Let the hands rest without needing to reach for anything. Hands do so much. They open doors, carry bags, type messages, hold cups, lift laundry, comfort others, point, prepare, clean, mend, gather, arrange. Tonight, they can be quiet. They can lie open. They can do nothing. Doing nothing is sometimes the kindest work a tired body can remember. Let the breath move slowly. A soft breath in and a soft breath out. Another gentle breath in and out again. No counting, no strain, just breath entering and leaving, like a curtain moving near an open window. Let the chest soften. Let the stomach soften. Let the back of the body feel supported, Let the legs become heavier. Let the feet release the day beneath them. You have walked far enough for now, even if you hardly moved. Some days are traveled mostly inside the mind. Some days ask the heart to take too many small steps. Tonight, those steps can stop. And as the body begins, little by little, to settle, imagine the night not as darkness, but as a great piece of velvet, deep blue, soft, warm at the edges, held open beneath the moon. Imagine that somewhere in a fairy tale town beyond the edge of ordinary waking, there is a sewing room where the lamps burn low and golden. There are folded fabrics stacked by color. There are little drawers of buttons. There are ribbons curled in boxes. There are needles sleeping in velvet cushions. There are silver spools waiting beside a window. And at the center of the room sits a seamstress whose work begins only when the world grows quiet. She does not sew gowns for balls, not tonight. She does not mend torn coats or hem ordinary curtains. Her work is softer than that. She embroiders the night itself. With silver thread, she stitches small stars into the dark places. She adds pale borders to clouds so they drift more gently. She mends the loose seams of evening where tired thoughts sometimes slip through. She sews little paths of light across the sky so dreams can find their way without becoming lost. Everything she does is slow. Everything she does is careful. Every circuit says, "Rest now." Every thread says, "You are held." So let yourself come with me now, softly and without effort, into that candlelit sewing room. Let the world outside grow quieter. Let the night draw near like fabric over a sleeping shoulder. And when you are ready, we will begin. Tonight's story is called The Seamstress Who Embroiders the Night with Silver Thread. In the old hill town of Bellwether, people said the night had once been plain. Not empty, not frightening, only plain. A wide, dark cloth spread above the rooftops, gentle enough, but without much pattern. There had been a moon, of course. There had been clouds. There had been the soft outline of chimneys, towers, and tall trees. But the stars, in those oldest stories, were fewer and farther apart. The sky had not yet learned all its little silver details. Then, one winter long ago, when the nights were especially quiet and the snow lay thick on the lanes, a seamstress moved into the attic room above the ribbon shop. She brought with her a wooden trunk, a brass lamp, 3 pairs of scissors, a blue velvet pincushion, and a spool of silver thread that did not seem to end. No one remembered her surname. Some said she was called Elsin, some said Elise, some said she had arrived from a country where the moon rose out of the sea, and every child learned to sew by starlight. But the part everyone agreed on was this: On the first night she stayed in Bellwether, a new star appeared above the clock tower. Small, steady, beautiful. The next night, 3 more stars appeared over the baker's lane. The night after that, a pale silver curve edged the clouds around the moon. By the end of winter, the sky above Bellwether had become a thing of quiet wonder. Not crowded, not dazzling, only tenderly adorned, as though someone had sat by a warm lamp and embroidered the dark until it felt less alone. Generations passed. The first seamstress became a story. The story became a custom. The custom became a quiet office. And now, in the same attic above the same ribbon shop, a woman named Maribel Vale kept the work. Maribel was not old, but she had the stillness of someone who had listened for many years. Her hair was dark and usually pinned loosely at the back of her head. A few fine strands always escaped by evening, curling near her temples, no matter how carefully she began the day. Her hands were graceful without being delicate. Capable hands. Hands that knew cloth, thread, tension, weight, and warmth. Hands that could knot without tugging too hard. Hands that could smooth the crease from linen with one slow pass. Hands that could hold the edge of a tear and understand how it wished to be mended. By day, Maribel was an ordinary seamstress. She hemmed skirts, let out waistcoats, repaired cuffs, altered sleeves, turned collars, lined cloaks, and stitched names into handkerchiefs for children going away to school. The people of Bellwether brought her all sorts of garments. A blue coat with a missing button, a wedding veil needing a new comb, a pair of gloves whose seams had loosened at the thumb, a velvet cape belonging to the theatre keeper, a flour-dusted apron from the bakery, a fisherman's wool scarf torn by a splintered crate. Maribel took each piece seriously. Nothing was beneath care. If a garment had served someone well, it deserved to be handled kindly. But after the ribbon shop closed, after the last bell of the evening faded from the clock tower, after the lamps in the lower street were lit and the shopkeepers drew their curtains, Maribel climbed the narrow stair to the attic room and began the work that belonged only to night. The attic room had a sloping roof, 3 arched windows, and a low door that stuck in damp weather. Its floorboards were honey-colored and worn smooth near the work table. Shelves lined the walls from waist height to ceiling. On those shelves were folded fabrics of every quiet color: midnight blue velvet, gray wool, cloud white muslin, moss green linen, rose brown silk, black satin soft as still water. There were drawers labeled in Maribel's neat hand: pearl buttons, horn buttons, mending silk, moon hooks, soft needles, winter ribbon, summer ribbon, thread for names, thread for hems, thread for dreams. At the far end of the room, beneath the largest window, stood the night frame. It was taller than Maribel and wider than an open door. Its wood was pale ash, rubbed smooth with beeswax. Across it was stretched a piece of deep blue fabric that seemed, at first glance, simply to be cloth. But it was not only cloth. It was the lower edge of the night. Not all the night. No one person could hold that. Only the part above Bellwether, the part that stretched from the Orchard Hill to the old mill pond, from the South Bridge to the North Chapel, from the clock tower to the dark line of pines beyond the cemetery wall. Every town, every village, every hidden valley had its own keeper in one form or another. Some had lamplighters, some had bell tenders, some had cloud combers, some had quiet gardeners who watered the edge of dreams. Bellwether had a seamstress. And every night, the fabric on the frame showed her where the sky needed tending, not with danger, not with panic, only with small requests. A dull place where a star had faded, a loose cloud seam, a tangled silver path, a place above a sleepless house where a little more softness might help. The fabric never spoke. It did not need to. It shimmered, clouded, warmed, or cooled beneath Maribel's hand. She had learned to read it the way other seamstresses read wool or silk, by touch, by weight, by patience. On the night our story begins, the rain had ended just before dusk. All day, Bellwether had worn a low, gray sky. Water had run down the cobbles, the gutters had murmured, shop signs had creaked. People had come into the ribbon shop, shaking rain from their coats and laughing quietly at the weather. By evening, the clouds had thinned, and the moon had risen behind them like a lamp behind linen. The town smelled of wet stone, coal smoke, warm bread, and the green scent that rises from ivy after rain. Maribel had finished her last ordinary task just after 8, a schoolteacher's sleeve neatly repaired. She pressed the seam with a damp cloth, folded the jacket over brown paper, tied it with string, and wrote the teacher's name on the parcel. Then she swept loose threads from the table into her little thread bowl. Maribel never threw away thread at night. Threads gathered during the day were set aside and taken once a week to the nest hedge behind the chapel, where birds used them for lining when the season was right. Even waste could become warmth if treated thoughtfully. Downstairs, the ribbon shop owner, Mistress Pell, called goodnight from the back room. Maribel answered softly, "Good night, sleep warmly." Mistress Pell laughed in her gentle, breathy way. "That is what I am trying to do, dear." Then the shop door closed below, the lock turned, and the building settled into evening. Maribel stood still for a moment at the center of the workroom. This pause mattered. Day work and night work were not the same. A hem could be finished with focus, a cuff could be repaired with skill. But the night required another quality: tenderness without hurry, attention without worry, care without grasping. Maribel washed her hands in a blue basin near the stove. She dried them carefully, finger by finger, then rubbed a little balm into her knuckles. The balm smelled of lavender, beeswax, and almond oil. She lit the brass lamp on the table, then the smaller lamp near the thread drawers, then the glass-covered candle on the windowsill. The room brightened slowly, not all at once. Maribel did not like sudden light after dark. A room should be allowed to wake gently, too. She changed from her day apron into her night apron. The day apron was sturdy brown linen, marked here and there with chalk dust, pinholes, and a small line of ink near the pocket. The night apron was blue, deep blue, almost black. Along its hem, Maribel had stitched a narrow border of tiny silver leaves. Not for show. No one saw her wearing it except the moon. She liked having one garment that understood the hour. Into the night apron pockets, she placed the tools she would need: a packet of fine needles, a silver thimble, small scissors shaped like a stork, a piece of chalk made from powdered shell, a soft brush, a folded cloth, a little notebook, and the key to the thread cabinet. The thread cabinet stood beneath the eastern window. It was made of walnut wood, and its doors were inlaid with mother of pearl. Inside were the threads that could not be bought in shops. dawn thread, mist thread, river thread, lantern thread, feather thread, old gold thread, and on the highest spool, wrapped around a core of pale bone, the silver thread for the night. Maribel unlocked the cabinet. The silver spool caught the lamplight and answered softly. It did not sparkle in a harsh way. It glowed, like frost seen from inside a warm room, like the edge of a cloud when the moon is behind it, like a quiet answer to a quiet question. She lifted the spool with both hands and carried it to the table. Then she placed it in its little wooden stand. The thread loosened from the spool and fell in one smooth curve. It was thinner than ordinary embroidery silk, yet it never snapped. It could pass through velvet, cloud, shadow, and the edge of dreams. It could hold a star in place without pinning it too tightly. It could mend a frayed night without making the seam visible. It was a thread made for gentle work. Maribel sat, threaded her needle, and waited. She always waited after threading the needle. The first stitch should never be taken from impatience. The room quietened around her. The rain beyond the window stopped dripping from the roof. The town clock struck 8:30. The night frame shimmered once. Maribel rose. She crossed to the frame and stood before the stretched fabric. At first, it showed only deep blue. Then, slowly, the map of Bellwether's night began to appear, not as streets and houses, as soft impressions. The clock tower was a pale vertical line. The river was a dark curve touched by silver. The bakery lane glowed faintly amber. The orchard hill had tiny dim specks where wet leaves held moonlight. The old mill pond appeared as an oval of blue-black shine. Above the north chapel, the clouds were gathered too closely. Above the bridge, there was a loose place in the sky where the wind had pulled at the edge of a star path. Near the southern row of cottages, one window glowed late. Maribel looked at it gently. Someone awake. Not a crisis, not a story of trouble, only a wakeful window. Every town had them. Every night had at least one. A lamp staying on, a person reading one more page, a mind circling back over the day, a heart waiting for sleep to come nearer. Maribel touched the place on the fabric with the back of her finger. The cloth warmed faintly. Softness needed, she murmured. Then she marked it with one tiny chalk dot. She began with the clouds above the north chapel. Cloud seams, if left too tight, could make moonlight fall in uneven patches. Too much brightness in one lane, too little in another. No harm, only a small imbalance. Maribel chose a curved needle and drew the silver thread through the corner of the frame. The needle entered the blue fabric without resistance. One stitch, then another, then another. She used the chapel stitch for clouds, a small crescent half hidden beneath the next. It made a seam flexible rather than firm. As she sewed, the clouds on the cloth loosened. Outside, beyond the attic window, the real clouds over the north chapel shifted. A pale opening appeared between them. Moonlight moved through. Not dramatically, only enough to touch the chapel roof, the yew trees, and the wet stones of the path. Maribel paused to look. There, that would do. She tied the thread with a knot so small it almost vanished. Next, she worked on the star path above the bridge. Star paths were not roads exactly, more like little silver tendencies in the sky, places where dreams, thoughts, and prayers moved more easily. Above bridges, star paths mattered. People crossing water at night often carried something with them: a thought, a decision, a memory, a hope for morning. The bridge in Bellwether was low and old, made of pale stone darkened by moss. Tonight, the wind had loosened 3 small stars above it, leaving them slightly out of line. Not fallen, not lost, only misplaced. Maribel took up her smallest needle. For stars, she used anchor stitches, not tight. A star held too tightly lost its shimmer. She caught the first point of light with a loop of silver, guided it half a finger's width to the left, and fastened it lightly. Then the second, then the third. Outside, the bridge brightened just enough for the river beneath it to show its slow movement. A cart horse asleep in a field lifted its head, then lowered it again. The world approved in its own quiet way. Maribel returned to the table and opened her notebook. She wrote, "Rain ended before dusk. Cloud seam, North Chapel loosened. Bridge star path straightened. Southern row window wakeful. Moon behind thin linen cloud. Thread calm." She always wrote the condition of the thread. Some nights it ran quickly through her fingers, eager to work. Some nights it moved slowly, as if the night itself wanted less mending and more listening. Tonight, the thread was calm. That usually meant the work would be tender rather than intricate. She set down the pencil and poured tea from the small pot near the stove. It was elderflower and chamomile. She drank half a cup while standing at the window. Below, Bellwether rested beneath the moon. The ribbon shop sign hung still. The wet cobbles reflected the lamps. A man in a dark coat walked slowly down the lane, carrying a covered basket. Probably Rowan from the bakery, taking warm rolls to his sister after her long day at the infirmary. Maribel watched him place the basket on a doorstep, knock once, and walk away before anyone answered. A kindness left without performance. She smiled. Bellwether was full of those. When she turned back, the night frame had changed. The southern row window was brighter now. The chalk dot she had made pulsed softly. Maribel moved closer. The fabric around it felt thin, not torn, only thin from too much wakefulness passing through the same place. There were certain houses where this happened more often. A mother with grown children far away, a clerk who worried over numbers long after the ledger closed, a widower who liked the radio low because silence still felt too new, a woman whose days were full of caring for everyone else and whose own thoughts only spoke when the house finally quietened. The night frame did not tell Maribel names. It did not reveal private sorrows. That would have been unkind. It only showed where softness might help. Maribel chose a thread slightly different from the first. Silver, yes, but with a faint warmth running through it. Lantern silver, for wakeful windows. She threaded the needle, breathed once, and began. The stitch for wakefulness was called the hush stitch. It was very simple: a small line, a curve, a small line, a curve. It did not close anything, it did not push anything away. It created a gentle border around a place so thoughts could slow at the edge before entering. Small line, curve. Small line, curve. Maribel stitched around the glowing window on the fabric. Outside, in the southern row of cottages, the late lamp flickered, then softened. The window still glowed, but not sharply now. A curtain moved. The light lowered slightly. Perhaps the person inside had closed a book. Perhaps they had set down their spectacles. Perhaps they had simply taken a deeper breath without knowing why. Maribel did not need to know. She only finished the hush stitch, tied the thread, and rested her hand over the place for one long moment. "May sleep come kindly," she whispered. If the world we are entering now has begun to quiet something in you, even a little, then you are exactly where you need to be. Subscribing to the SleepStory Collective means you can find your way back to soft places like this one whenever the night feels too full. For now, let us stay with Maribel, where the lamps are low, the thread is silver, and the next stitch is waiting. After the southern row, Maribel turned her attention to the orchard hill. The rain had left every branch heavy. On the night frame, the orchard appeared as a dark mound scattered with dim flecks. Apple leaves, wet bark, old ladders leaning against trees, a little storage shed where baskets were stacked. The orchard did not need mending, it needed ornament. Some nights were like that. No loose seam, no wakeful window, no troubled cloud. Only a place ready to receive a little beauty. Maribel opened the drawer marked "Small Stars." Inside were tiny pieces of prepared silver thread, each already knotted at one end. She used them for scatterwork, the kind of embroidery that made a place feel watched over without drawing attention. She stitched 7 small stars above the orchard, not in a straight line, not in a shape anyone would name, only scattered lightly, the way apple blossom falls in spring. One near the upper branch of the oldest tree, one over the shed roof, one above the path to the beekeeper's gate, one above the rain barrel, one over the place where children sat in September to eat windfall apples, one near the old stone wall, one high enough to belong more to sky than orchard. As she stitched, the real orchard outside the town brightened in tiny points. Wet leaves caught moonlight, the grass glittered. A sleeping blackbird adjusted itself under a branch. Everything remained quiet, only more tenderly seen. At 9 o'clock, the tower bell rang. The sound moved across the town in slow circles. Maribel stopped working while the bell spoke. This was another rule of the night room. Never stitch through a bell. A bell was a seam in time. It marked where 1 hour ended and another began. To ignore it would be like sewing over a fold without smoothing it first. So she sat with her hands still, needle resting on the frame, and listened. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. When the last note faded, the room felt newly arranged. Maribel stood and stretched her fingers. She flexed each one gently. Then she walked to the little stove and added a narrow piece of applewood to the farm. The flame accepted it with a soft sound. Warmth moved through the attic. The windows misted faintly near their lower edges. She took the folded cloth and wiped a clear half-circle in the glass. Below, the lane curved away towards the market square. The square lanterns were all lit. Their reflections trembled in the rain-dark stones. A cat crossed the street under the awning of the apothecary. A cart stood empty near the fountain. A row of closed umbrellas leaned outside the inn, drying like sleeping birds. Maribel loved the town most at night. By day, it belonged to everyone. By night, it revealed what care had made of it. When she returned to the frame, a new shimmer had appeared above the old mill pond. The mill pond lay at the western edge of Bellwether, ringed by reeds, willow trees, and a path of flat stones. Its surface reflected the moon when the air was still. But tonight, because of the earlier rain, the pond was busy with little ripples from dripping branches. On the frame, the pond shimmered unevenly. Maribel considered, not mending, not ornament, balancing. She opened the drawer marked water thread. Water thread was silver with a blue undertone. It moved almost too easily through the needle eye, as if eager to become a ripple. She chose a long needle and began at the top edge of the pond shape. For water, she used running stitches. Long, short, long, pause, short, long, short, pause. They created a rhythm without forcing stillness. The point was not to flatten the water. Water should move. The point was to help its movement become restful. Outside, at the old mill pond, the ripples continued. But their pattern changed. Instead of crossing and worrying one another, they widened softly. The willow branches dripped, circle into circle, circle into circle. The moon in the pond no longer broke into sharp pieces. It became a trembling whole. That was enough. Maribel wrote in her notebook, "Mill pond balanced with water thread. Do not still what only needs rhythm." She paused after writing that. It was a good sentence, not only for ponds. She underlined it once. Then, because underlining seemed a little too firm for the hour, she smiled and drew a tiny moon beside it. The next task came from the fabric drawer. Sometimes the night frame did not need stitches directly. Sometimes it needed a patch. Not because anything was damaged badly, because certain parts of the night became worn from use. The path between the midwife's cottage and the south lane, for example, had once needed a soft patch after a month when 3 babies were born and many feet crossed under moonlight. The bell tower steps had needed patching after an old man climbed them every evening for a week to look at the horizon while his brother traveled home. The market arch had needed patching after winter when people gathered there to share hot soup during a cold spell. Use wears things. Love wears things. Care wears things. Not in a bad way, only in the way a favorite blanket thins where it has warmed someone often. Tonight, the worn place was above the north chapel path. Maribel had loosened the clouds there, but now she saw the deeper issue. The path itself had been heavily walked. Not today, over years. People used it when they wanted quiet. It led between the chapel and the yew trees, then on to the old stone bench overlooking the town. The night above that path had become thin from carrying so many private thoughts. Maribel opened the fabric drawer and chose a patch of soft gray-blue silk, the color of sky just before dawn. She cut a piece no larger than a leaf. Then she softened its edges with the brush so it would blend into the cloth. Patching the night required patience. If sewn too tightly, a patch could create a visible square of stillness where the sky no longer breathed. If sewn too loosely, it would lift and flutter in the wind. Maribel pinned the silk with 3 moon pins.
Then she used the smallest silver stitches around its edge. Each stitch entered the patch, then the blue fabric beneath, then returned. Patch, night, patch, night, joined without being forced. She thought of all the people who had walked that chapel path over the years, people needing a breath before returning home, people carrying flowers, people reading letters, people grateful, people weary, people not quite sure what they felt, only that they needed trees and stone and a little room. The path had held them. Now the night above the path would be held too. When the patch was finished, it was almost invisible, only a softening in the fabric, a place where the blue looked deeper, more rested. Outside, the North Chapel path received the same softness. Moonlight lay there now without strain. The yew trees no longer seemed to pull all the light into their branches. The bench at the end of the path became visible, damp and waiting. No one sat there tonight. That was good. Even benches needed nights when they did not have to hold anyone. Maribel returned her needle to the cushion and drank the rest of her tea. It had cooled. She did not mind. Cool tea in a quiet room had its own comfort. The hours moved gently. Maribel worked without haste, a loose silver thread above the clock tower. A faint brightening needed over the infirmary roof. 3 small stars added above the schoolhouse. A cloud edge softened over the inn. A lantern-shaped stitch placed above the stable yard. Each task was small. Each task mattered. The town did not become peaceful because nothing needed tending. It became peaceful because tending continued, quietly, without fuss, without spectacle, without asking to be praised. This was true of many things: homes, gardens, friendships, bodies, hearts, nights. A peaceful thing was not always untouched. Sometimes it had simply been mended many times by careful hands. At 10:30, Maribel heard a small sound on the stair. A creak. Then another. Not a stranger, not a worry. Only Mistress Pell, who sometimes came up late with a pot of something warm when she could not sleep. Maribel set down her needle. "Come in," she called softly. The low door opened and Mistress Pell appeared carrying a tray. She was a round, silver-haired woman with clever eyes and a fondness for shawls that did not match her dresses. Tonight, she wore a rose-colored wrapper, a green shawl, and wool slippers embroidered with tiny yellow birds. "I know," she said before Maribel could speak. "I ought to be asleep." "You ought to be comfortable," Maribel replied. "Sleep may follow if it wishes." Mistress Pell smiled and set the tray on the table. "Cocoa," she said, "not too sweet, and 2 oat biscuits because the rain made the day longer than necessary." Maribel laughed quietly. "Rain does that sometimes." Mistress Pell looked towards the night frame. "How is Bellwether tonight?" Maribel considered. "Damp, tender, a little wakeful in the southern row. The mill pond needed rhythm, the chapel path needed patching." Mistress Pell nodded as if this were ordinary news, which, in this room, it was. "And you?" she asked. Maribel looked down at her hands. "Still steady? Then all is well enough." Mistress Pell patted her shoulder once, light as a moth. "I will leave you to it, dear. Thank you for the cocoa. Thank you for the night." Mistress Pell went back down the stair, and Maribel stood for a moment in the warmth of that simple exchange. she ate one biscuit and drank half the cocoa. Then she returned to the frame. The silver thread moved smoothly again through the needle. A new pattern had begun to form near the eastern edge, very faint, almost shy. Maribel leaned closer. It was not above a house or road. It was above the open fields beyond the town wall. There, farmers had stacked hay under canvas, and sheep slept in the lower meadow. The sky above the fields had developed a wide, plain stretch with no stars. That sometimes happened after long rain. Clouds carried the night's ornament away and left the fields under a blank, dark cloth. Fields did not mind darkness, but sleeping animals liked a few soft markers. Maribel chose a pattern called shepherd's scatter. It was made of small, uneven star knots placed far apart, enough to guide, not enough to wake. She stitched one over the hayfield, one above the lower meadow, one near the stone stile, one over the sheepfold, one near the hawthorn hedge. Then she added a thread so fine it looked almost imagined, joining the stars loosely, like a path only dreams could follow. Outside, the fields answered. Far beyond the last cottage, the open land took on depth. The sheep remained asleep. The hawthorn hedge shone faintly where rain still clung to it. The stone stile became a pale shape in the dark. The hay canvas glimmered. Maribel rested her hand against the frame. Good. The night did not need to be decorated everywhere. Empty spaces had value. But there was a difference between emptiness and abandonment. A few small stars could say, "This place is part of the world too." As the town moved towards 11, Maribel began the constellation work. This was not required every night, only on nights when the air had cleared after rain and the moon was bright enough to carry new patterns. Constellations above Bellwether were modest. No dramatic beasts, no warriors, no crowns. The people of the town preferred useful constellations. The kettle, the open gate, the sleeping cat, the needle, the loaf, the lantern cart, the willow comb. Children learned them from grandparents, pointing from bedroom windows before sleep. Sailors from the river towns teased Bellwether for having such domestic stars. But anyone who had ever tried to find comfort on a long night knew the value of a kettle, a gate, a sleeping cat, and a loaf. Tonight, the needle needed refreshing. Its stars had dimmed in autumn mist, and the long silver line between them had become faint. Maribel felt a private fondness for that constellation. It sat just above the clock tower, from late autumn to spring, small and clear. A seamstress deserved at least one star needle in her sky. She took the silver thread and separated it into 3 strands. One ordinary silver, one pale blue, one almost white. Then she recombined them through the eye of a needle so fine it was kept in its own velvet case. The needle required a straight stitch, but not a rigid one. A needle in the sky should look capable, not severe. Maribel placed the first star, then the second, then the third. Then she drew the long thread between them with slow, even tension. The constellation appeared on the fabric. Outside, above the clock tower, the needle brightened. 3 tiny stars, 1 silver line, clear enough for a child to find, soft enough, for a tired adult to rest beneath. Maribel smiled. She imagined someone, perhaps not tonight, perhaps weeks from now, waking in the small hours, looking out and seeing the needle steady above the rooftops. A reminder that some things could be mended. Not everything, not instantly, not perfectly, but some things, enough things. After the needle came the border. The border of the night was not at the horizon, as people sometimes thought. It lay wherever the day finally stopped reaching. On busy evenings, the border stayed close to the town, because people carried their day outward in thoughts, footsteps, and lamplight. On peaceful evenings, the border widened beyond the fields. Tonight, after rain, the border had softened but frayed slightly near the western pines. Maribel took a darker silver thread from the cabinet. Border thread. It was less bright than the others, almost grey. It did not call attention to itself. That was why it worked. She stitched along the western edge of the night frame, using long anchoring loops. Each loop gave the sky a little weight. Not heavy, settled. Outside, the line of pines grew calm beneath the moon. The land beyond them disappeared gently rather than abruptly. The night felt complete. Midnight approached. Maribel could always feel it before the clock spoke. The attic room changed. The lamps seemed to bend inward. The thread grew quieter. The fabric on the frame deepened from blue to something close to black, though still warm. Midnight was not the middle of darkness, not in Bellwether. It was the hour when the night became most itself. The hour when less needed to be done. The hour when the town stopped pretending it might still be evening. Maribel set down her needle before the clock began. Again, she would not stitch through a bell. The tower spoke. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. The last note rang longer than the others, or perhaps she only heard it more deeply. At midnight, Maribel performed the quiet turning. She went to each of the 3 windows and opened them a little. Not wide, only enough for night air to enter and the room's warmth to meet it. At the north window, the air smelled of wet yew and stone. At the east window, of chimney smoke and rain. At the south window, of bread cooling somewhere below. She returned to the work table and turned the silver spool 1 full circle in its stand. Then she took the thread between finger and thumb and held it up to the moon. If the thread glowed blue, more mending was needed. If it glowed white, more ornament. If it glowed warm, more softness. Tonight it glowed warm. Maribel nodded. Softness then. The night frame showed the whole town now, in a slower way. The southern row window had gone dark. Good. The bridge star path held steady. The mill pond moved gently. The chapel path rested under its nearly invisible patch. The fields were lightly starred. The clock tower carried the needle bright and clear. Only one new place called to her: a small room above the apothecary. Maribel recognized the shape by now. The apothecary's niece, Clara, had come to live there in spring. She had traveled from the coast after her parents moved abroad for work. A kind girl, everyone said. Capable, cheerful in the shop, but often seen late at the upper window, looking out as if trying to learn the town by lamplight. Homesickness, Maribel thought gently. Not a wound to be closed, a thread between places. She chose a thread from the drawer marked Distance. Distance thread was fine, pale, and slightly iridescent. It was made for people whose hearts lived in more than one place. She threaded the needle and began above the apothecary room. The stitch was called the returning stitch. It moved forward, then back. Forward, then back. Each stitch covered new ground while touching the place it had just left.
Forward, back, forward, back. A pattern of going and belonging at the same time. Outside, the apothecary roof received a faint wash of silver. Not enough to wake Clara if she slept, enough to soften the window if she opened her eyes. Maribel stitched a little star above the chimney and a second, smaller one near the south edge of the sky in the direction of the coast. Then she joined them with one almost invisible line, a line no one would see unless they needed it. That was the way of distance thread. It did not make longing disappear. It reminded longing that it could be held gently. Maribel tied the final knot and whispered, "May both places keep you." Then she wrote in the notebook, "Apothecary, upper room, returning stitch, distance thread, for a heart learning two homes." The cocoa had cooled completely by then. Maribel drank the last sip anyway. Her hands were warm from work, her eyes were calm. Outside, the town had entered the deepest part of night. No carts, no footsteps, no voices. Only the occasional drip from roof edges, the far sound of the river, and the soft wind moving through wet leaves. She gathered the loose ends of thread from her lap and placed them in a small glass bowl. Silver thread ends were never thrown away. At the end of each month, Maribel used them to make little tassels for the sleep bells hung in the infirmary windows. The bells hardly rang. They simply moved when night air passed through, sending faint comfort into rooms where people needed gentleness. Nothing was wasted if one was patient enough to find its second kindness. For a while, there was no work from the frame. Maribel sat beside it, hands folded, listening. This was perhaps the hardest lesson she had learned as a young seamstress of the night. Not every stillness needed to be filled. The first months after taking the attic room, she had looked for work even when the frame did not ask. She had added too many stars above the market, too much silver near the bridge, a cloud border that made the west sky look overdressed. Mistress Pell, who had known the previous seamstress, had come upstairs one night, looked at the frame, and smiled kindly. "You are trying to make the night grateful," she had said. Maribel had flushed. Mistress Pell had taken her hand. "It already is, dear. Let some of it be plain." Since then, Maribel had learned to leave space. Plain sky had its own mercy. A restful room did not need every shelf filled. A quiet life did not need every moment decorated. A sleeping mind did not need every thought answered. At 1 o'clock, the frame shimmered again. This time, the call came from inside the attic itself. That happened rarely.
Maribel looked around. The lamps were steady, the stove was low. The windows were open just enough. The thread cabinet stood closed. The silver spool rested in its stand. Then she saw it. Her own night apron had a loose thread along the hem. A tiny silver leaf had begun to lift. She laughed softly. So, me too then. It was easy, when tending the night above a town, to forget the garment on one's own body. She sat at the table, took off the apron, and laid it across her lap. The loose leaf was near the left corner, where the fabric often brushed the table edge. A simple mend, ordinary, necessary. She threaded a short length of plain blue silk, not silver, and stitched the leaf back into place. One small stitch at the base, one at the side, one to secure the stem. There. She put the apron on again. The frame quietened. Maribel shook her head, still smiling. Even the night could remind a seamstress to mend herself. After one, the work changed from tending to easing down. There were still things to do, but fewer. She checked each earlier stitch, the cloud seam, holding, bridge stars, holding, southern row hush stitch, settled, orchard scatter, gentle, mill pond rhythm, even, chapel path patch, blended, the needle, bright, apothecary returning stitch, soft, western border, complete. Each one needed no further work. That too was satisfying. A stitch doing its quiet job, not noticed, not praised, just holding. Maribel closed the notebook for a while and crossed to the west shelf. There stood a row of small cloth bundles tied with ribbon. Each bundle held a request left by a townsperson during the day. People did not ask for miracles. They knew better. They left small requests for the night when they felt moved to. A little more softness over the orchard because my husband walks there when he misses his brother. A star near the schoolhouse because my daughter likes to look for one before sleep. A gentle cloud over the east lane because the lamp outside my room is bright. A clear patch above the river because tomorrow is my first day at the ferry. Maribel read every request. She did not fulfill all of them, not because she lacked care, because the night could not be used like a shop counter. Some requests were not needed. Some would make the sky too busy. Some were already answered by weather, moon, or ordinary kindness. Tonight, one bundle remained unopened from the afternoon. It was tied with pale green ribbon. Maribel untied it. Inside was a square of paper. If there is room, could you place a small star above the laundress yard? My mother works late there when the in-sheets come in after rain. She says she does not mind, but I think she would like one. No name, only a child's careful handwriting. Maribel touched the paper and looked at the frame. The laundress yard lay behind the inn, narrow and practical, with lines, baskets, a pump, and a shed where soap was kept. The night above it was plain, very plain. Mistress Pell's old warning returned to her. Let some of it be plain. But plain was not always the same as neglected. Maribel took one small length of silver thread and stitched a single star above the laundress yard. Only one, low and warm. Not a decoration, a companion. Outside, behind the inn, where damp sheets hung under shelter and baskets waited for morning, a little star appeared between the moving clouds. It touched the pump handle. It touched the washing line. It touched the shed roof. It touched nothing too brightly, but anyone standing there late would see it. Maribel folded the child's note and placed it in the answered box. Then she wrote, "Laundress yard, one companion star, requested by someone who noticed." She paused. Requested by someone who noticed. That might be the gentlest kind of request. Not for oneself, not for attention, only because another person's quiet work had been seen. The night went on. Maribel lowered the stove. She trimmed the brass lamp. She closed the south window when the air grew cooler. She kept the north and east windows open a little longer. The silver spool had become smaller, though never by as much as it should have. That was one of its mysteries. It gave thread all night and still remained. Like patience, perhaps. Like love when properly rested. Like a song people kept singing from one generation to the next. At 2 o'clock, the clock tower spoke again. Maribel rested through the bells, then began the final embroidery of the night. The sleep border. This was stitched not around the town, but through it. A nearly invisible line passing from rooftop to rooftop, not connecting every house, but touching enough of them to remind the night it was shared. Sleep border was done only after the main work was complete. It was not meant to make everyone sleep. That would be too forceful. It simply made the town feel held in one cloth. Maribel threaded the needle with the softest silver. It was almost grey, almost smoke. She began at the western pines. One stitch above the mill pond, one above the orchard, one above the schoolhouse, one above the bakery lane, one above the market square, one above the apothecary, one above the southern row, one above the ribbon shop itself, one above the bridge, one above the chapel path, one above the laundress yard, one above the open fields. The thread between them was so fine that even Maribel could hardly see it unless she tilted her head. But she could feel it. A soft continuity. A town gathered gently under one night. Outside, bellwether seemed to settle lower on its hill. Not physically. Something in the atmosphere lowered. The roofs looked less separate, the lanes more peaceful, the lamps less lonely. The river moved with the same slow sound, but now it seemed part of the same breathing as the trees, the tower, the houses and the sleeping fields. Maribel tied the last sleep border knot above the bridge. Then she cut the thread with the stalk scissors. The tiny sound of metal through thread marked the end of the night's main work. Snip. She placed the scissors down. Then she rested both hands flat on the table and closed her eyes. For several breaths, she did nothing. The night had been tended. The body had worked. The hands had earned stillness. After a time, Maribel began to put the room to rest. This was as important as the embroidery itself. A room that had held careful local work deserved careful closure. She returned the needles to their packet. The curved needle, the star needle, the voting needle, the frank constellation needle in its velvet case. She brushed stray fibers from the table. She wound the remaining silver thread back onto its spool, slowly so it did not twist. She placed the spool in the walnut cabinet and locked the mother-of-pearl doors. She emptied cooled tea leaves into the little compost pot.
She folded the cloth. She capped the chalk. She closed the notebook after one final entry. Sleep border completed. Thread calm throughout. Town settled. Hands tired but steady. Remember to thank Mistress Pell for cocoa. She smiled at that last line. Then she added another. Mend own apron sooner next time. The night frame still glowed, but faintly now. The fabric had become a smooth, deep blue again, its work absorbed into the real sky. Maribel ran her hand lightly along the lower edge. The cloth was warm, not hot, only warm with use. "Thank you," she whispered. She did not always know whether she thanked the frame, the night, the thread, or the town. Perhaps all of them. Perhaps gratitude did not need a precise address every time. She loosened the frame pegs by a quarter turn so the fabric could rest. Then she covered the lower rail with a strip of soft muslin. The muslin was old, washed many times and patched at one corner. It had belonged to the previous seamstress of the night. Maribel never replaced it. Some softness improved with age. Outside, the moon had moved west. The clouds had thinned to wisps. The stars above Bellwether now held their places. The needle over the clock tower, the companion star above the laundress's yard, the shepherd scatter over the fields, the little orchard stars, the returning stitch above the apothecary, the hush around the southern row, the balanced shimmer over the mill pond. No one in the town saw all of it. No one needed to. A sleeping person does not need to know who folded the blanket. A tired traveler does not need to know who lit the lamp. A child does not need to know who stitched the star. It is enough that the blanket is warm, the lamp is there, the star is steady. Maribel blew out the glass-covered candle on the windowsill. Then the smaller lamp near the drawers. The brass lamp on the table stayed lit until last. She took off the night apron and hung it on its peg. The mended silver leaf rested flat along the hem. She changed into a soft wool wrapper and brushed out her hair. The attic room, without its working lamps, became silver and shadowed. The shelves of fabric looked like sleeping hills. The drawers sat closed. The ribbon boxes held their curled colors in darkness. The stove gave its last low warmth. Maribel carried the brass lamp to the small sleeping alcove behind a blue curtain. The alcove was simple. A narrow bed, a folded quilt, a shelf with 3 books, a little vase holding dried lavender, a round mirror covered with cloth at night, and beside the bed, on a small stool, a bowl where she placed her rings, hairpins, and thimble. She set the thimble there now. It made a tiny silver sound. Before getting into bed, she opened the alcove window a crack. From there, she could see the top of the clock tower and, just beyond it, the needle shining in the sky. Her own constellation. Not hers to possess, hers to tend. That distinction felt restful to her. There were many things in life one could tend without owning. A room, a garden, a friendship, a craft, a town's night sky, a listener's soft passage towards sleep.
Maribel looked at the needle and felt her own breath slow. The night did not need more from her. The town did not need more from her. The thread was put away. The frame was loosened. The lamps were out. Everything that could be done had been done gently. That was enough. She climbed into bed and drew the quilt up to her shoulder. The quilt was patched from pieces of fabric given to her by townspeople over the years. A square from the baker's old apron. A piece of green wool from Mistress Pell's favorite shawl. A strip of blue silk from a wedding dress altered for a woman who later became the town librarian. A corner of brown linen from the miller's work coat. A small patch of white cotton from a baby blanket. A piece of velvet from the theatre keeper's curtain. No patch matched perfectly. That was why she loved it. The quilt was warm because it was made of many lives. Maribel rested beneath it and listened. The town clock was silent now. The rain had stopped completely. The river moved. The attics settled. The night held. And all over Bellwether, little signs of her work remained. Above the north chapel, the cloud seam loosened and let the moon pass gently through. Above the bridge, 3 small stars held their softer line. In the southern row, the wakeful window had gone dark. Above the orchard, 7 tiny stars rested like blossom. On the mill pond, ripples widened and crossed without troubling one another. Over the chapel path, the almost invisible patch gave the night enough strength to keep holding private thoughts. The needle shone above the clock tower. The companion star watched the laundress's yard. The returning stitch lay between Bellwether and the unseen coast. The sleep border joined roof, road, field and river in one quiet cloth. The town did not know all this in words, but perhaps, in sleep, it understood. Maribel's eyes grew heavy. Her hands, which had stitched cloud, star, water, border, distance and hush, lay open on the quilt. The fingers twitched once, as if finishing an invisible stitch. Then they stilled. In her mind, the last image was not the grand sky, not even the needle. It was the child's note in careful handwriting. A star for the laundress's yard, requested by someone who noticed. Maribel carried that thought with her as sleep came closer. To be noticed gently, to be cared for quietly, to have one small star placed above your work without needing to ask loudly. That was a beautiful thing. And perhaps tonight, one small star can be placed above whatever quiet work you have done too. The things no one saw, the patience you used, the effort you did not explain, the care you gave without turning it into a performance, the way you kept going, the way you softened for someone else, the way you came here at the end of it all, ready to stop. Let there be a companion star above that, not bright enough to wake you, only steady enough to say, it counted, it mattered. You may rest now. There is nothing more to stitch tonight. nothing more to hold together. The loose seams can wait. The unfinished edges can wait. The thread is back on the spool. The scissors are closed. The lamps are low. The town is covered in one soft cloth of sleep. Let your thoughts become like folded fabric. One piece laid down, then another, then another. No need to sort every color. No need to find every hem. No need to mend everything before morning. Just fold what can be folded. Rest what can be rested. Leave the rest on the table for another day. The attic room remains. The frame remains. The walnut cabinet remains with silver thread sleeping inside. The stove holds its last warmth. The moon rests beyond the window. The constellation of the Needle shines above the tower. Maribel sleeps beneath her patchwork quilt, and Bellwether, stitched softly under stars, breathes in the dark. You are allowed to sleep. You are allowed to stop holding the edges. You are allowed to be the one who is covered now. The night can be the seamstress. The dark can be the velvet. The breath can be the thread. In and out, slowly, softly, again. Nothing sharp is coming. Nothing needs to be answered. Nothing needs to be solved in this hour. The world will still be there in the morning, but for now, you may let it become distant. You may let the roofs grow small. You may let the lanes grow quiet. You may let the silver stitches fade into dream. If this gentle room has felt like somewhere you would like to find again, subscribing to the Sleep Story Collective keeps the door open to more soft worlds like this one. There will always be another quiet story waiting when the night asks for comfort. Rest well now. Let the needle sleep. Let the thread sleep. Let the lamps sleep. Let the town sleep. Let Maribel sleep. And let yourself drift gently, stitch by stitch, into the deep quiet of the night. Good night. Good night.